Sav Omnis, and in this video I'll explain the names of books, films, series, and each other from Ukrainian Lost Media iceberg. This is the second part, so let's go. Update on some information. When I decided to write a script for this video, we had already found the film The Secrets of St. George. It was found in the archives of the Karpenko Kerry Nugget this year despite the scandal. So sorry for the inaccuracy in the previous video. You can understand that the status of this film is found. Fortunately, you can watch the fragment that was posted online, and this will serve as my apology for the misinformation.
Із кіл близьких до тимчасового уряду ми дізналися, що анархісти готують розгром державного архіву. Ваше завдання
Згадайте, добродію, влітку 15-го року зі Львова привезли архіви.
Yes, I made subtitles separately so that you could understand the atmosphere of the film. That's roughly what I imagined in my head when I described the film to you. If this or that moment is updated, I will write in a new part. All because in 2025 there are chances that there will be active updates in the Ukrainian Lost Media, and therefore I will keep my finger on the pulse. So let's go continue.
Тріумф українського танцю. Triumph of Ukrainian Dance is a 1954 documentary or performance film showcasing the traditional Ukrainian dance. It was thought to be lost for many years, likely to lack the proper archival practice or the upheavals that affected many cultural works from that era. However, it has since been rediscovered and is now available again. Sorry for my dyslexia. The film is significant because it captures not just the beauty of Ukrainian folk dance, but also a piece of Ukraine's cultural heritage from a very specific time. In 1950s, many countries, including the Soviet Union, which Ukraine was part of until the 24th of August in 1999, were producing films to document traditional art forms and folk practice as part of state-sponsored cultural prevention. Тріумф українського танцю likely falls into that category, showcasing the rich dance traditions of Ukrainian people. Given that it was lost for so long, its rediscovery is a big win for those interested in both Ukrainian history and the preservation of folk traditions. It's a reminder of how much cultural material can be lost or forgotten over time, but also how much can be recovered if efforts are made. This is also one of Vasily Avraменko's outstanding works. So that film was found.
Transylvania Smile is one of the first solo works recorded in 1994. At this time, Svetlana repeatedly visited Germany, where she had experience playing in various German parks and on the streets, and also contacted many musicians and artists. Her collaboration with the international choreographic group Pentamonia, based in Cologne and consisting of several girls who performed in theaters, participated in various performances, studied music, etc., was especially productive. They met back in 1990 during joint performances with Sugar, White Death. After that, they corresponded, during which the idea of doing something together arose. Svetlana visited several of their performances to be inspired to write music for a new performance, and the group members helped to realize their creative ideas. Later, they began to hold joint rehearsals. I decided to find information and listen to and watch the clip for the sake of this video. So, quite an interesting album, even a little dark. In principle, if you are interested in vintage, but at the same time creepy music, then it is worth your listening. Status, found. Mickey Mouse works, but Ukrainian dubbing. It's better not to do this with pirated voice acting. This search was for the sake of this video. I just happened to find the 8th, 9th, and 10th episodes of the first season, as well as the 2nd, 10th, 11th, and 12th episodes of the second season. I decided to check with the original voice acting to understand if I found everything correct in terms of the visual part and voice acting, but it turned out that the seasons and episodes coincided. This is even though this animated series was shown around 1999 to 2000. Status, partly found. Chipmunk and Hedgehog, and also this moment about Ukrainian dubbing. My expectations, there will be something about this cartoon. Reality, I found a cartoon series called The Squirrel and the Hedgehog with North Korean propaganda. Fortunately, status is fully lost.
Можливо, завтра.
Maybe Tomorrow is a recently lost Ukrainian film shot in 1932 at the Ukraine Film Studio. General information. If you search on Google, there is very little information about the film itself. All because it was not shown in Soviet cinemas. One of the consequences of this was that soft kino was released with a strict censorship. Although this is not surprising given the Soviet censorship and is somewhat similar to the Chinese one. Despite the fact that the film was shot, it ended up in lost media for a very long time because of the plot. Plot of this film. The end of the 1920s, there is a crisis in Europe. In the warehouses of London, Paris, New York, and Berlin, there is a mountain of unsolicited goods. Almost everyone is unemployed. Many demonstrators come out who want bread. The police disperse them. Only military factories work almost around the clock. The Nazis attack the USSR. So many workers join the Red Army. Enemy planes appear over the Soviet city dropping shells. Columns of remembrance of war victims walk through the streets. At the end of the film, a Red Army soldier addresses us with the words to be ready for war. Unexpected fact about the plot. The following year after this film, the NSDAP staged a coup in 1933. The film predicted war. Search, a rather interesting situation. We started searching on April 19, 2021, namely on the Discord server on Lost Media. Later, on October 12th of the same year, a user under the nickname Poyer decided to send a message to the State Agency of Ukraine in order to search and digitize some films, including maybe Tomorrow. Later, the answer came that this film is in the Dovzhenko Center, although it was found during a full-scale war in Ukraine. As for the filming, it is mostly static rather than dynamic, and there is USSR propaganda at every moment. Status, found.
Очима сатани.
Very briefly about the film, Through the Eyes of Satan is a 1991 Soviet television film shot by director Yevgeny Solintsev at the Upper Telefilm Studio. If we talk about the plot, it is an adaptation of the play Behind the Door by the French writer J.P. Sartre about the nature of women. Status, fully lost.
Казка про білку хазяйку і мишку лиходійку.
The Tale of the Squirrel Hostess and the Villainous Mouse is an animated film based on a folk tale about the hardworking squirrel and the lazy mouse. who eats the snowman's winter supplies. At the same time, it was made on 150 meters. In principle, not very long, but I guess about an interesting drawing for that time. Unfortunately, this animated film has not survived. Status: fully lost. Ostap Bandura 1924 film. The young general's coachman Ostap Bandura learns from his father about the cruel massacre of his grandmother by a landowner serf. The whole story inflames Ostap's hatred for all possible landowners and the desire to take revenge for his grandmother. Once, near the river under an old oak tree, Ostap sees the general's daughter named Yulia Kornyagina drowning. The guy saves the girl and later falls in love with her. However, she chooses the old General Kornyagina as her cavalier. Ostap in anger takes her life. This is despite the fact that he fell in love with her. The main character is imprisoned. Behind bars, Ostap gets acquainted with various political prisoners and begins to understand that the peasants can only be freed through a revolution. During the days of the October Revolution, Ostap becomes a political activist. During the Civil War, he leads a detachment of Ukrainian Red Partisans who engage in battle with the White Guard unit of General Kornyagin. The last of 8 six-feature films to propaganda films was shot by Vladimir Gardin in Ukraine, according to some researchers. The name and image of the main character of the film formed the basis for the image of the main character of the famous novels by Elf Andy Petrov. It is no coincidence that Ostap Bender pretends to be a hero partisan of the Civil War like the character of the film, then tells about his adventures in Murhorod during one of the cheerful breaks between Makhno and Tutianik, and then generally appears at the first Black Sea Film Factory with the exclamation Golconda and the sound script of the folk tragedy Shia. Well, it was at this film factory that the great combinator was partly born, muse of the cinema screen. 1987, no, 12. As for the length of the film, it is from 1579 to 1759. This is approximately from 5,180 to 5,770 feet. The film premiered the 9th of May 1924. The film has not been preserved and therefore its status is completely lost. Aquatine Hunger Force Ukrainian dubbing. There is talk about the Ukrainian voice acting of this series. There is even a recording of the actors working, but unfortunately the entire series with this voice acting has not been preserved. Here, as with most programs that were on this channel, there is Lost Media, status fully lost. Brain Ring to 06 to 07, 2011. Brain Ring was a Ukrainian intellectual quiz show that aired from 2006 to 2007 and later returned in 2011. It was a fast-paced, team-based trivia competition, somewhat similar to What, Where, When, but with a more dynamic format. Status partly found.
Stalker Online.
Yes, you may know about STILK, Our Heart of Chernobyl, which was released in the fall of 2024. Because of this, there was an internet collapse in Ukraine due to downloading this game. However, this is not even about versions such as Shadow of Chernobyl, Clear Sky, Oblivion Lost, and similar options. Status found.
Солодка Даруся.
Sweet Darussia is a film adaptation of the novel of the same name, which was released in 2004 by the Ukrainian writer Maria Matios. A little about this film, a film adaptation of the famous novel by Maria Matios, Sweet Darussia. Director Alexander Denisenko. Work on the film project is taking place under the patronage of President Petro Poroshenko and with the support of Oscar-winning director Andrzej Wajda, Sławomir Idziak, Vitaly Klitschko, Andrzej Strumilo, etc. Plot. In the middle of the 20th century in a Ukrainian Hutsul village occupied by Soviet troops, the unfortunate orphan Darussia tries to overcome all her terrible visions from the past. All she can remember is a deep sense of guilt for the tragedy she was involved in as an innocent child. This film also raises the topic of bullying among children and adolescents, as well as mental trauma and similar topics. I warn you in advance, this film is mostly intended for an adult audience. all because of some specific scenes with the interaction of the main character and her mother. Then with The Guardian, who was too openly interested in the main character's physique because of her mental state and the fact that other villagers could find her in strange places, namely a river, a treetop. This is despite the fact that when he spoke about it, she looked around 16 to 23 years old. But as I noted, she has special mental health needs. That man looks around 50 to 68 years old. I think he's jerk for Darusayevan Thauga though. By the way, as for the language, they very correctly chose the Hutsul dialect in order to perfectly convey the atmosphere of the plot. Even if I had information, I managed to find information that this film is based on the book of the same name. I found someone's thesis, but with the same plot and atmosphere. Although the film that the author of this iceberg wanted to mention is dedicated to the victims of the occupation regimes in Ukraine and the Heavenly Hundred. I think he's a jerk for her, because he wanted to have a baby with her, but she didn't love him. I want you to know that you understand my impressions. I won't go on for long, otherwise it would be enough for a 15-minute video, but I have enough topics to discuss here. So I'll move on to the next topic, status, partly found. Encyclopedia Dramatica. Encyclopedia Dramatica is an online community website centered around a wiki that acts as a troll archive, and its community members frequently participate in harassment campaigns. The site hosts racist material and shocking content, which resulted in its removal from Google search in 2010. The website's articles lampoon topics and current events related to contemporary internet culture in an encyclopedic fashion. I'm about Ukrainian version. Also, you can find memes or avatars for Discord, status, fully lost. The Morning Report, the song cut from The Lion King. I watched the cartoon and saw the musical The Lion King, but I didn't hear the Morning Report, status, non-existed.
Vaplet Journal, Archive, issue number 6.
The publications of Vaplet are periodicals and non-periodicals that were printed by Vaplet members during 1926-1927. By periodicals, we mean 6 issues of the literary and artistic magazine Vaplet. By non-periodicals, we mean Vaplet, Notebook First and Vaplet, Almanac First, which were both the first and only. Here we are talking about issue 6. It was not published because of the USSR and its authorities' status and released.
До добра и красы.
For Good and Beauty, also known under another title as For Good and Beauty, is the first Western Ukrainian full-length film. Released in 1938, based on a script by Roman Kopchinsky and Vasyl Safronov-Levitsky, directed by Yulian Dorish. The first screen tests for the film For Good and Beauty were organized by the Ukrainian company Photofilm. Currently, the film cannot be found. Probably the film For Good and Beauty disappeared during World War II. The plot of this film. The film tells the story of a young man from a wealthy family, and his entire conscious life was filled with entertainment and fun, but who, by chance, was robbed and beaten by Botyars and ended up in the house of the head of the cooperative. Under the influence of his daughter and for the sake of his sincere feelings, the boy takes up his mind and becomes interested in the problems of Ukrainian cooperation, reads books, and morally reborn. In a dark unconscious village lives a young man named Roman, a rich man's son, a lazy man, and a windbreaker. He spends his nights partying and playing cards, returning home in the morning. He pays no attention to his father's reproaches, and when he has too many of them, he leaves the house. After one such quarrel, he goes to the city to the fair, and at the market he watches how merchants and bandits cheat the peasants. Having lost money at 3 cards, he gets into a fight with the city thugs and comes out of it badly beaten. It takes place in winter. It is already evening when Roman returns home from the city. On the way, in the middle of a blizzard, he almost freezes, but is saved by the head of a cooperative from another village, who is returning from a cooperative meeting. He takes Roman to his house, thanks to the head's daughter Marika, and under the influence of a book about Ukrainian cooperation that he received from Marika. Roman gradually changes, but nevertheless leaves with a pumpkin from Marika, because she does not want a windswept and lazy man for a husband, even a rich one. Minus 18 to 18 issue of Economic and Cooperative magazine for April 24, 1938. The main roles are the young man Roman, Andrei Polishchuk, a famous soloist of the Lviv Opera Theater at that time. Marichka Safian, a member of the amateur theater in Kopychinsky. The rest of the roles were played by the peasants of Semenivka, Durosha's native village. Creation. Most of the filming was done in the town of Kopychinsky, and the rest among the picturesque landscapes of the Dniester near the village of Rakovets, not far from Horodenka, Ivano-Frankivsk region. The film was also difficult due to weather conditions. There was a lack of sun in the summer, and a blizzard was needed for the winter scenes of the fair in Horodenka. And the winter of 1936-37 turned out to be practically snowless. There was no money for artificial snow. The scenes with carols without snow would have looked inappropriate, so the filming was delayed until the following winter. Perception. After the premiere in Lviv on November 19, 1938, the film was a huge success in Galicia. Some phrases that describe this film. There was a lot of romance and folklore in that film. Very picturesque scenes on the river, when they wash clothes, or when a guy plows with horses and sings. And that guy was played by Andrei Polishchuk, who studied to be a singer in Lviv. And then a Ukrainian wedding with old music, costumes, etc. I had a wonderful wreath on my head. Later, that film was shown in all the towns and villages where there were cooperatives. Maria Safian. This is a very pleasant work. For me, it is all the more interesting because it is the first Ukrainian film. I am sincerely glad that I was lucky enough to take part in it. I work with true widowhood, and I hope that these first pioneering steps in our film art will not be wasted, but will create a basis for higher flights. Andrei Polishchuk. This is a very pleasant work. For me, it is all the more interesting because it is the first Ukrainian film. I am sincerely glad that I was lucky enough to take part in it. I work with true widowhood, and I hope that these first pioneering steps in our film art will not be wasted, but will create a basis for higher flights. Andrei Polishchuk. During the editing of the film, a conflict arose between the Polish administration and Dorosh. The Poles demanded that Polish subtitles be shown first, but for Julian it was a matter of principle. It was only in Warsaw that he obtained permission to use only Ukrainian subtitles. Status: fully lost. Kenga Presents is a Ukrainian video game television show that aired in 1995-1996 on the Kiev regional TV channel TRK Zoloty Voroda. Format of the TV show. The show had two pairs of TV hosts. In both cases, a teenager and an adult. Their names have not yet been established. In one of the discovered episodes, the hosts host the TV show in Russian, in all others in Ukrainian. Kenga Presents was broadcast in the then popular format of video game reviews. First, the hosts presented a new game at that time in the studio, and then the show switched to a gameplay video, over which the senior host talked about the game itself. At the end of the same show, the hosts read out letters and answered them, after which they held a quiz in which the audience had to guess the name of the game whose gameplay was demonstrated on the screen. Traditionally, for programs of this format at the time, the main purpose of the program was to sell games, so all reviews were exclusively positive. About Kenga consoles. Kenga is a Ukrainian or a formal Ukrainian-Russian video game company that existed in 1994-1996. It is known as a distributor of clones of famous consoles Sega Mega Drive and Famicom in Ukraine, Russia, and other countries that were part of the Soviet Union, although it is good that the USSR collapsed. Perhaps the most famous company was its aggressive advertising campaign in 1995-1996. The company's management created the Ken Club, whose members had various privileges for purchasing games and consoles. A Ken card with a 5% discount was also issued for them, and once a month a random card holder received $500. Kanga sponsored the Ukrainian program Kanga Presents and also created a show with the participation of Ken Club members in Russia. The company left the market at the peak of its popularity and transferred the brand to another market, opening a chain of stores for children. The company is known to have sold the following consoles: 1 Mega Ken Sega Mega Drive clone, 2 Ken Kid Famicom clone, 60p cartridges, 3 Ken Kid to Famicom clone, 7p cartridges. Status: partly found.
Жук у зоопарку.
Jack in the Zoo is the sequel to Tuk Tuk and Jack. This cartoon is about a dog called Jack. This main character had bizarre adventures at the zoo. However, he was kicked out due to his unfriendly behavior towards other animals at the zoo. I can't find any moment from that cartoon because status is fully lost. Star Night TIAMC1 game. As I already said about the games on TIAMC1, Star Night is an arcade game that was released in the 1980s. As for its developers, it is still unknown which development team or one person created this game. It was distributed in places where there were children and teenagers. I'll answer this. There were no arcade machines on the level of Pac-Man or Polybius in Ukraine. All because of the Soviet occupation. Status: fully lost.
Куй парад.
Kuy Parade is a humorous television program that aired in Ukraine in the 2000s. It was a parody of music charts and show business in general. The program ridiculed popular artists, music videos, trends, and show business stereotypes using satire, grotesque, and humor. Its host was Igor Kondratyuk, and one of the key characters of the show was Uncle Vito, performed by Serhiy Sivako. The program had a rather sharp humor and parody style, so not everyone liked it, but it was well remembered due to its uniqueness in Ukrainian television at that time. Status: fully lost. Status: fully lost.
Пеппапедия.
Bibapedia is a lost TV show with a trash format, which was shown on QTV in the late 2000s. I myself am shocked that it was almost 20 years ago. This show was created at the channel's own expense. One episode took 30 minutes, approximately from 16 o'clock to 16:30. The host of this show was an unemployed passerby named Vladimir Biba, who used to be a diva in Nizhyn. He made a rather interesting pitch for this TV show. Bibapedia was often shown after programs with selections of funny family home videos. This was before most people learned that such content can be published on YouTube and social networks in general and receive likes for it. Unfortunately, most of the episodes can be considered lost, but at the same time, cuts were created from the minority so that fans of this TV show could watch and be nostalgic for the times when this program was shown on TV.
Лісова года in color.
Forest Treaty is one of the first Ukrainian color and sound animated films. According to the plot, the animals decided to conclude a peace treaty in order to work and live in peace. A cunning fox joins their League of Nations, who, having lulled the vigilance of all his neighbors with the sweet melody of a picture with a dove of peace on it, insidiously violates the treaty. Perhaps the authors of this cartoon were talking about current events. For example, the war in Ukraine. Don't forget to donate $20 to Serhiy Pritula for drones. Status of this animated movie: fully lost.
Фент Лото Надія.
Fant Lado Nadia is a Ukrainian TV show that was designed for approximately 6 to 17 years old and was shown on UT1. The intro began with a black cat. This program was mostly shown in the 90s of the 20th century. Also in this show, there were questions that had to be answered correctly, songs, dances, invited guests, and they did not forget to mix it with a certain atmospheric presentation. What I understood, and there were also gifts in the form of cartoon cassettes, a trip to rest. Considering that all this happened in Ukraine between 1991 to 1999, this is not surprising. Mostly children aged 4 to 9 participated. In principle, if they wanted to get an education and build a career in music or dance after that and needed to tell about themselves, then this could be a good reason for the admissions committee to consider the applicant as a cool student. Because they have such a positive experience. Status: partly found. SpongeBob SquarePants. There is no need to talk about the plot and characters for a long time, and all because this animated series was created at the Nickelodeon studio. But there is one catch here in the form of a Ukrainian version, which was shown on the Novi channel. I will not explain for a long time about the status of the partially found Pee-wee's Big Adventure 1985 Ukrainian dubbing. Here, as with the previous case, we will talk about Ukrainian translation about this film. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is an American adventure comedy film from 1985, directed by Tim Burton in his feature film directing debut. The film stars were Paul Reubens as Pee-wee Herman, along with E.G. Daly, Mark Holton, Diane Salinger, and Judd Ullman. The screenplay, written by Reubens with Phil Hartman and Michael Varhal, tells the story of Pee-wee's search for his stolen bicycle and has been compared to the 1948 Italian film Bicycle Thieves, status fully lost. So this video is going to the end. Don't forget about like and subscribe for new parts. Bye and see ya!